In the last episode, we prepped and painted the riverbed, and I said the next steps were to add the details in preparation for pouring resin. Well, I have a bit of a confession to make. I kind of started without you. I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you, I promise. So let me explain how we got here. The first step in detailing the riverbed was to build the gravel and the riprap that I was going to use to line the edges of the riverbed. And I decided not to film that for a couple reasons. One, the process I used is based largely on a video from Southern Alberta Rail. It's a very good video. It is a members only, but for what it's worth, he's got some really good content, and I think a membership is worth it. And two, I didn't want to spend, that in and of itself could have been a whole video. And I didn't want to spend the time creating that video, and instead wanted to work on actually detailing the riverbed. And so I decided not to film that process. Now, once I was done creating it, and this is the two different sizes that I created, I wanted to put a little bit in place just so that I could see how it was going to look. And I was a little concerned that it might be too light. And so I started spreading out the gravel where I thought it should go, the boulders and the riprap where I thought it should go. And to keep it from sliding down, I put a little matte medium. Before you know it, it's done. So here we are. So we'll pick up from here. And getting back to the color, I still haven't entirely decided whether I need to darken this or not. I think, the intent is that it should be similar to the mountains, since, hypothetically, that's where it came from. So I haven't quite decided whether or not I want to put a little more color, but that I think is the next step. So let me take a good look at that, decide whether I'm going to put a little extra color on there, and then we'll go from there. So I thought it would be useful to look at some actual photos of mountain rivers to get a sense of the colors and how they relate, and make sure that we're kind of on the same page to give you guys an understanding of what it is I'm shooting for. So if we look at this photo, you can see that the mountains in the background, obviously they're shifted blue just because of their distance, but also they do appear a bit darker in relation to the foreground rocks. The foreground rocks do in fact seem pretty light, similar to the rocks on my layout. Also notice the color of the river itself. It's a fairly calm river at this point, and it has a color, I think, that is very much in line with what I'm shooting for. By way of contrast, here's a river that has a lot darker rocks on either side. This incorporates a lot more of the browns and burnt umber, orange kind of look, a bit of which is in my mountains. But I think this is way too far in the other direction. I do, however, like the color of the river and the little bit of white caps in there. So again, from that perspective, I think this is a good reference. This one is interesting to me because I think the colors are actually very similar to what's on my mountains. It has a bit of the orange, kind of burnt umber look to it. Maybe a little bit lighter than the mountains, but this does argue for maybe adding a little bit more color to those rocks. And finally, here's one more that I think is interesting because of the contrast between the boulders in the foreground and the talus on the slope there, and the rocks and mountains immediately behind it. You can see a bit of that orange in there, but you can also see that clearly the mountains are a little bit darker than the talus on the slope immediately in front of it. So bottom line is, I think I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of color to the boulders closer to the mountains. and a little maybe do a little darkening, and then I'm going to ease that off as I come forward. So let's get that done. First, let me start with a correction. Earlier, I mentioned a couple times, I believe, burnt umber, which you can see right here. That is incorrect. What I'm actually using is burnt sienna, which, as you can see, is a very different color. So that being said, I've gone ahead and mixed up another wash, maybe a little heavier than the original wash. And let's go ahead and start in the back there and put a little burnt sienna on those rocks. Okay, now I'm actually going to let that dry a little bit, and then we'll add a little bit of a black wash there to darken it up. It's had a few minutes to dry, so let's go ahead and put a dark wash on there. It might be a little too dark. Let's see. It doesn't look too bad, but let's give it a few minutes to dry and see where we're at. I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm going to go ahead and continue coloring, adding a little color towards the front, kind of tapering it off as I go, and let's get that done. Okay, I think that's it for the sienna. Okay, I think we'll give that a chance to dry and move on to the next step, I think. Okay, it is time to roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty. And by that, I mean it's time to put a little dirt on the layout. And I have a couple of things I'm going to try. I've got straight old play sand, straight from Home Depot or Lowe's. I've got some leftover blasting media. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think it's garnet. And then I made a 50-50 mix of the two of them. And I'm going to start by putting some full-strength matte medium back up in this area, and I'm going to sprinkle some of each in there to see what it looks like, and then I'll make a decision and we'll go from there. Well, I don't love any of that. I'll let that dry and then we'll reset and try again. Okay, I mixed another batch. This one is a 2-to-1 ratio of the sand to the garnet or whatever it was. And also I diluted the matte medium a little bit to help it flow. So let's try this and see what this looks like. Okay, let's let that dry for a little bit, and we'll vacuum it off and see how that looks. Okay, I tried, I put a little bit of just straight sand on top of there to see how it looked, and I think I kind of like that. I think a layered approach might be the right way to go. I want the dark, but I don't want the dark to come all the way down to the water's edge. I do want a bit of a cleaner sand look down there. Not exactly a Florida beach, but not organic matter all the way down. So I'm going to try in this little area. I'm going to put a little bit of sand up there. I'm not putting any mat down. I'm just going to put the sand up there, kind of brush it in, and if I like the look, then I'll spray it with some wet water and adhere it in place. So let's give that a shot. Well, that's not horrible, but I also don't know if that's very practical. I'm going to have to do that all along the water's edge. That could get old quick. I need to think that over. But in the meantime, let's just let it be for a bit, and we'll come back to it. So after mulling it over and watching a few more videos, I have decided on a different approach. I'm going to recoat the base using the latex paint, and I'm going to put down some patches of a mixture of the equal parts the sand, the garnet or blasting media, and some gray sanded tile grout. I think that'll be a fairly close match. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the static grass on. So let's give that a shot and see what happens. All right, now let's see if we can get a little grass in there. This will be my first time using any static applicator at all. So I've been trying to get some static grass in place, and it has not been working well, and I've been trying to figure out what my problem is. And then I realized that the Static King that I'm using just has not actually been on, even though I have the switch turned on. There's actually an LED that's supposed to go on to let you know. Bottom line is, it hasn't. I've been trying to use it when it wasn't actually turned on. I'm using a wall wart. It's just a 12 volt, 230 amp input, and I got tons of wall warts, so I didn't buy a specific. I think they want like $40 or something for their adapter, and that's ridiculous because I got a bunch of them lying around. Turns out my problem is that, for some reason, the Static King has the center pin being negative versus most barrel jacks where the center pin is positive. So just be forewarned. I believe it's from the research I was doing, I think it's a 5.5 by 2.1 barrel jack, but the key thing is it is center negative, not center positive. So in case you're having trouble with it, hopefully that'll help. In the meantime, I'm going to try it now with it actually turned on, hopefully, and working, and let's see what we get out of this. And I'm using a mix of 2mm and 7mm grass, and because I've already got some color and stuff down, I'm doing this with just straight matte medium. I'm gonna put a bit in place and just see what happens. I'm picking up some of the stuff that I put down earlier that didn't lie down correctly. But hey, I guess that'll just represent dead grass. Hopefully this will work a little better. I'm working on a little cluster of trees and branches and stuff that have washed down the stream and caught against this rock, and I want to use this as a kind of a little bit of a focus. I've got a couple fly fisherman figures that I'm going to put in here to kind of draw your eye, make this a bit of a focus. And part of this is I just thought now would be a good opportunity to call out a couple things I'm doing intentionally to help with the kind of compressed scale of the layout. First off, notice that in the background slope here, the static grass is all 2mm to help promote the sense of distance, and also smaller boulders and stuff like that, whereas up close you got larger boulders, and the slope is a mix of, or the grass up here is a mix of 2mm and 7mm static grass. And it's very easy to lose a sense of proportion and scale, I think, when you're working on this. And I just wanted to point something out to help with that. I've got a little figure here, N scale figure, that I have keep on the tweezers here so that I can maintain that sense of scale. This stuff looks pretty small, especially if you're working on it all the time. You tend to focus on it, and so to help maintain a sense of scale, I think it's useful to keep a little figure around so that you can put it next to things and get back your sense of proportion. This little boulder here is as tall as a man, right? This one over here is taller. These tree trunks here at scale are probably 1.5 feet, in diameter, foot and a half in diameter. So in order to make things look proportionally correct, what I'm doing, these are just roots from the yard. I'm going to clip off a bunch of these things and kind of stack them up there, and then I'll, wet them down and bond them into place. I may try putting a little bit of thin super glue on there to help keep them from just deteriorating. We'll see how that works. But anyway, the point of this little sidetrack was to kind of point out the proportions and scale considerations on the layout. Here I'm building the dam to contain the resin when I pour it. It's pretty straightforward. I'm just putting a piece of Scotch tape across the opening and using some gloss Mod Podge to seal it, and then putting some hardboard behind it as a backer to help prevent blowouts. So I've put the hot glue dam here for the resin to flow up against when I pour it. One thing I'm a little concerned about, though, is this little face here, this angle, kind of feels like the water would come off and maybe come this way. I'm not sure exactly what it should do and whether or not I should build this up to channel the water more to this side here. So to get a sense of what would actually happen, I'm going to go ahead and pour some actual water in there, and let's find out together. Actually, that looks pretty good. That in fact does what I want it to do. Okay, I've mixed up the first batch of resin and it's time to pour. I've never done this before, so hopefully this goes okay. Let's start up here. Let's see how that runs out. Let's pour a little bit in there. Ooh, that might be a little much. Right there. Wow. This is hard. Oop. Let's see if I can cheat that over there. This one's gonna be tricky. Gotta be very careful not to hit that bridge. Oop, oop, oop. That's not good. Yikes. Okay, we're gonna let that sit for about 4 hours. The window for the next pour is between 4 and 10 hours. So I will be out here in 4 or 5 hours and we'll do another one. Just looking at what I see up here, this looks good. I'm fine with the water or the resin dripping down because I'm gonna simulate the water coming down there anyway, so I actually think that's pretty good. These little bits here look fine. That split actually exactly as I was intending anyway, right down there, so that's perfect. I think it looks good. I just need more depth in here. I'm gonna say I need to add, I don't know. I think that's only probably an eighth to maybe 3/16 deep, at least at the abutments there, or not the abutments, the piers. I think I probably need to go maybe twice that. We'll see. But I will see you in 4 hours. Okay, time for the second and final pour. Let's see how this goes. All right, let's take a look there. A little bit right here in the corner. Oops. Well, do I want to go any further? Looks like there's a little bit of a low spot right in there. Don't know if I want to go any more than that. I don't think I can go any higher than that. Okay. I think that's going to do it. Let me just get rid of the bubbles. I think that is it. Now the question is, do I want to brush some stuff on there? And I think the answer is yes, I do. On the waterfall. All right. Better or worse, that is done. Okay, it's been about 6.5 hours since the second pour, and it appears to be hard enough that we can remove the supports now. So let's do that. Okay, it's time to start building the waterfall, and I'm going to start by taking some measurements. What I've done is I've just kind of blocked out the waterfall sections, and I'm going to get up there and measure it and write down the measurements and then use that to lay it out. And I'm going to actually be making this waterfall. I'm going to try using water effects to lay out my waterfalls in advance and then stick them up there. So let's give that a shot. While we're waiting for the waterfall to dry, we're going to go ahead and put some ripples on. I'm going to use this gloss gel, and I've got a variety of brushes. I'm not sure exactly what's going to work best, but let's give it a shot. I'm going to put the little canoe in place by placing it on a blob of the gel and hopefully making it look like there's a bow wave and a wake. I can make something like a wake off of here. No, that does not look too bad. Let's go with that. Okay, it's been several hours since I put the gel on there. It is pretty well dry. I do see a couple little white spots where it was particularly thick, but I think we can safely start putting on some permanent white caps. I'm going to do that with some Tamiya flat white. I didn't like the way the dry brushing turned out, and so I ended up stripping all the paint off, and I've decided to try again. This time I'm just going to selectively highlight the waves. Here I'm just putting the water effects sheets into place. Notice that they're still pretty white. It's taken them a long time to dry. Well, it's been about a week now, and you can see finally the waterfall is mostly cleared up, which is good. So we're at the point in the video where I expected to kind of show you the finished product and wrap it up, but there's just one little problem. I don't like it. And let me explain why. There's a couple things. First, this waterfall just doesn't look natural enough to me. It looks kind of like ice or like artificial sheets. And so I'm going to have to do something with that. Now, I could rip those off and try again using a different technique. But I think I'm going to start by trying to modify these and apply another technique on top of it. Specifically, there are some videos by Kathy Malat, I think that's how you pronounce it, I'm sorry if it's not, that I would like to try. She does some waterfall stuff that I thought was really interesting and looked really good. So I'm going to maybe try applying some of her techniques on top of this. Another thing that my son actually pointed out to me is this waterfall here. I think it's oversized. Now that I see it in place, I think it just kind of looks like it would be too much flow for what we're seeing coming out the bottom. So I may need to pare that down a bit. So that's the waterfall. Now there is another problem, and that is the river. I've decided that it just looks too flat. I think that the decision to go with the painting on top there, I don't think that was the best choice. And also with all that stuff on there, it looks like it's kind of lost some depth. It looks like it's just too much of a painted on surface, and we've lost that translucency that is kind of the whole point of pouring resin. So I think I'm going to need to strip that paint off and try again. So I'm going to do a few tests of a couple different things, and we'll see what works. But in fact, I think I'm going to start with the river. So let's get the river handled, and then we'll move on to the waterfall. In an effort to reduce the apparent volume of this waterfall, I'm going to insert a little piece of rock that I created in a mold into there and reduce the volume of water coming down. And I'll do something similar on the lower part as well. So let's get that done. All right, we're gonna let that dry for a long time. All right, I've painted the new rocks. They're still kind of dark, but I'm gonna go ahead and start trimming the excess water effects. I'm gonna try to make it into kind of ribbons as opposed to one solid sheet. Not sure how this is gonna work, but hey, worst case is I rip them all out and start over again. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put a layer of resin over the water effects here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush it on first, and then I'm going to pour it at the tops and let it drip down. So let's get that done. We'll start down here at the bottom and work our way up. And it is perfectly fine if it gets on the rocks a bit, as long as we're not too sloppy about it, because the rocks would be wet anyway. Alrighty then. Let's pour this in. Carefully. Very, very carefully. This is going to be tricky. Let's see how that goes. I don't know that I really need to put any more on there. I've put a layer of gloss gel over all of the waterfall and the river to give it a good consistent base to start building on top of. I've also put a little bit of matte gel over the places where there's resin on the rocks. It looks a little too shiny to me, and I wanted to dull that down a bit. That's still drying, but while that's drying, I'm going to take some gloss gel that I've mixed a little bit of Vallejo white paint into, and I'm going to try to add some streaks up the waterfall to give it a bit more of that that kind of laminar flow. No idea how this is going to work. All right, let's let that dry and see where we're at. I decided I didn't like the way the area underneath that rock outcropping looked, and so what I did is I cut out and removed the gel and the resin underneath it, and I added in a new rock, which you can see me adding here, and then I'll paint it, and the waterfall looks a lot better, a lot more proportional with just the two streams coming down on each side. Here I'm using water effects to build up the froth and splashing around the base of the waterfalls, give it a little bit of volume. I'll come back and highlight them later. Well, I think we're going to wrap up this video now. I think the waterfall's looking a lot better, and as well as the river. We're in a much better place than we were a few days ago. It's not perfect. There's a few things I'd still like to do. In fact, I've got some UV resin on the way, and stay tuned for that. But until next time, take it easy. I'll see you later.